Hey, Pastor Will here, and we are about to begin an exciting exercise, and that is the exercise of writing your testimony. It is so important for a believer to be able to explain how they came to know Christ and what Christ means to them and the difference that Christ makes in their life. And that's what your testimony is. Sometimes we get intimidated because we overthink it. And so this video is just going to walk through the steps. It's a lot easier than you might think. Now, to help us on the page that you're viewing this video on, I have got my testimony there as a sample so that you can reference it, and it's separated into the three different segments that I'm going to mention. So you have an example that can help you as you're thinking through putting your testimony on paper and putting it in a form where it's easy for you to share with others. Now there's another link on this page. It's called Instructions, and it's got everything broken down, how to write your testimony. And the goal is that you want to be able to have a 3 to 5 minute testimony. If you were telling it to somebody, that's how long you'd want it to be. And so when you get it down on paper, after you're done, read it and see how long it takes you and use that to determine the length. If your testimony is 20 seconds, you probably want some more details in there. Remember, you're telling a story. You're trying to connect with somebody. So read it out loud and see how long it takes you. That's really important. It will also help you hear how it's written. Maybe it's clunky. Maybe some unclear language is in there. Maybe it doesn't make any sense. That will help you go back, and you're not changing the content. You're not making up details. You're just making sure that you can express it in a way that someone else understands exactly what you're saying. So what you're going to do when you sit down and you say, okay, I want to write my testimony, think about your life in 3 different segments. There's before Christ, how you met Christ, and with Christ. These are the labels I give these segments. Some other people might say before Christ, how you met Christ, after Christ, or have other labels for them. This is how I like to think of it. So before Christ, you're describing your life before you put your faith in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. Now, for those of us who grew up in church and became Christians at young ages, there's probably not going to be a lot here. And you can look at my testimony. That's going to be a good example. I'm a church kid, man. I grew up in church. I was at church whenever the doors were open. And so there's not a whole lot in that section. That's okay. Don't make up details. Don't try to spice it up. Remember, there are so many different kinds of people with so many different backgrounds. God uses us all. You don't have to have this overly dramatic conversion experience. But there was a time where you lived life like you didn't need Christ. And so make sure that's in there. So that's the before Christ. And you want to use details. You want to make it so that the other person can get into your life and relate. So that's before Christ. Then you write how you met Christ. And you want to recount your whole salvation experience. You want to put us right there with you. Where were you? What time of day was it? What was the weather like? Who were you with? What were you feeling? What were you thinking? What was the process like when you knew that you needed to accept Christ? Now, if you can't remember a whole lot of details because it was either a long time ago or you were very young, you can rely on others. I rely on my dad to give me some details about when I accepted Christ because I was 10 years old. But I do remember very vividly how I felt. I do remember vividly knowing I needed a Savior. And I do remember wanting Jesus to be my Lord and Savior and wanting to follow him. put that in there so that we can understand the decision you are making and what that meant to you. Then you're talking about with Christ. So this is your life as you're walking with Christ, as you're living out your faith. How are you different? What you're really trying to do is answer the question, why should anybody believe in Jesus? Who is Jesus to you? Who has he been to you? And it can be good to pick some specific circumstances. You'll see in my testimony, I zero in on some very specific events and use those to talk about the difference God has made and is making in my life. You want to highlight that, and so that people have something to latch onto. Now, if you can't think of how you're different, if you see no growth since you met Christ, that's probably something you need to come and talk to me about. We probably need to do some digging because there should be a difference. There should be a change. Coming to know the Lord is a radical transformation. So you probably want to come and talk to me about it. But that's it. It's not crazy. I would say work at it. Do a couple different drafts. Maybe give it to a spouse or a best friend or a coworker or your pastor or your Sunday school teacher, and let them read it over and help you if maybe there's something confusing in there. Maybe there's some things that don't make some sense, or maybe there's ways that can just smooth out the telling. And then when you've got your testimony done, you need to hand it into the church. You can bring it to us on a Sunday. You can drop it by the church office. You can email it to us. And we're going to make a special book. We're not going to publish it. We're not going to give it to everybody. We're going to keep it here at the church, and it's going to be for us, as an encouragement for us. And if you want to come by and you want to read through people's testimonies, you can do that. I think it's going to be a great thing for us. So I want everybody to write their testimony. I'm serious about this. We all need to do it because it's going to be good for us, but it's also going to be great encouragement, and it's going to equip us to share the gospel with the people in our lives, with the people we come in contact with. And that's really the ultimate goal of this. So if you have any more questions, or you get to a spot where you're just stuck, please reach out. We'd love to help you. That's why we're here. We're here for each other. So look forward to reading your testimony.